All right, hi guys. I'm so close to the swain. We're just positioning this the right way. Hang on. That's okay. Nobody cares. Yeah. But anyways, we are going to come closer. Jeez.
Scares me a little bit.
We are going to talk about our Bambino and Dragon Scale. Remember, I made this video and then
Yes, you forgot to turn the sound on, so we have to do it again.
Oopsie. But she has a lot of knowledge about these plants, and she wants to talk about Alocasia, and then we'll touch a little bit about the environment that they like or prefer from what we've seen, what we've read, and what we've, I guess, researched. I'll move these while she starts.
Yes, she's gonna make a noise with my pots now.
I'll try and be
anyway.
as quiet as possible.
All right, so basically Bambinos seem to be the most talked about plant out there with edema. So I've struggled a lot with Bambinos, so much so that I actually decided a long time ago when I first started, I was like, I'm never doing them again. That is just crazy. But I figured them out. Well, I think I have. As you can see, she is edema free and she has very high variegation. So that is always a problem. All the pink leaves normally get edema the most from what I've seen, and they die off super fast. As you can see, she's doing great and she has no issues, except for this one leaf because I watered her yesterday.
Aim for here when you're looking too.
Okay.
I look at myself because I like to look at myself.
Okay, that's different.
Narcissist.
So the rest are all edema free. So what I found is in my reservoir, okay, it's just been watering day because she was very dry. She was actually drooping. So what I've started to do is I take a measured sort of a quarter cup and I put it in my reservoir, and that's all I give her every week. I don't exceed that unless she droops or something and gets very dramatic, then I might give her a little bit more. I try to stick, I don't like to regulate water to once a week or have a schedule because I normally go on how they're looking and how much water is in the soil, and I can feel it. But with them, I try and limit it if I can, but not to the extent where they're drooping. So pretty much once a week, quarter of a cup or so in my reservoir for that, and I haven't had a problem. If you do get a problem with edema, I have found that putting them in close to a fan, not too close, because you don't want to dry your substrate out fast, then you're going to get other problems associated with that. So you want to keep them like a fan, just blowing like I had, and she moved. Just blowing gently sort of in the general air, like the direction of where your Bambinos are.
And to touch on that, okay, so I've started this. I want to start this video, even though we've done our little introduction, I'm slicing in a little bit because I keep having focusing issues and it's driving me nuts. So I actually have my phone so I can like watch and see if it's doing it, even though there's a slight delay, unfortunately. But I've changed a few settings, so we'll see if that makes a difference, okay? But I am going to be looking in a few random spots just to kind of monitor it and make sure. Now, my mom and I made our Bambino and Dragon Scale video. I'm going to keep my portion very brief if I can help it. I'm going to kind of explain the scientific sides of the conversation she's having. Unfortunately, my camera blurred me out on every clip. I was not in focus, which is lovely for me. I know, it's lovely for me. So I'm going to rewrite my parts, re-say my parts, and just kind of add it in after she's had her turn to write her parts, or to speak. Talk about her parts. Anyways, so I will just kind of I'll just kind of like start that after she talks a little bit, and then I'll explain kind of the science behind what she's speaking or what she's talking about. And hopefully that kind of makes sense. So, which was a very jumbled beginning, but I'm hoping I'm in focus. I can't really tell on my phone, but it is driving me absolutely up a wall, you guys. I edited the other day and I ended up just turning off my computer because I was like, I can't. I'm so annoyed that this is not working. So I stopped. So I have autofocus on, and I also have I have it on manual video, which maybe isn't the best idea, but we'll stop and restart it and try and figure it out. We talk about it. Looks like we're talking about fans and edema on Alocasia in general. Fans, like my mom says, is a quick fix, or can be a quick fix. However, you really don't want to have your fan on your plant for too long, especially those that are prone to edema, because what will happen is you will adjust the transpiration rate of that plant, and that can almost be kind of, you know, the opposite of what you're looking for. So when you're using a fan, you're actually cooling the surface area of your leaf, which closes up your stomatas, which is like your little doorways in your leaves. And that will not allow transpiration to occur or allow dissipation to come out of your leaves, which dissipation or transpiration is the release of like natural, just H2O. There's no minerals involved. It's what the plant needs to be releasing. Whereas when you're having guttation or edema, which is the swelling, the pressure of water in there, that's filled with minerals and essential minerals that you're releasing and getting rid of. So you don't really want that. So cooling down the area of those plants too much can actually be providing the opposite outcome of what you're looking for, which is lowering edema, right? So you actually want your plant to transpire as much as possible because you want it to get rid of that excess water. You don't want it trapped in the veins. You don't want it swelling, and you don't want to cause edema. And that's kind of what a lot of you are struggling with, and that's why we made this video. So I actually wrote down all the parts, so I will look occasionally at my book to make sure that I've touched on those topics to adequately provide like the information for you. So, and then I will stop and replay the next part when it gets there. So that was on transpirate. I will talk about that a little bit more in other parts of this video that kind of touch on this subject as well, but not as much. This is more kind of the part where we're talking about fans and how that affects it. So I'm just going on now, but let's carry on. I have like my collection of notes here that I'm going to refer to or look at as we go through this, so that I don't explain it the Taz way. I explain it the more scientific, professional way, because when I explain things, it's like how I think about it. And sometimes it doesn't connect the same with people as it would in my mind. So we just talked about VPD and humidity as a whole in general. And for humidity, Alocasia can actually be in a lower humidity than you would think, because they don't need a high humidity. And for Alocasia, they're very sensitive to being in high humidity, because then they can't release the water out of their leaves as effectively as you'd like them to. And that's kind of why their range is at the range that it is. So the range for Alocasia can really technically be at the lowest, easily 30% humidity, and all the way up to, I think the max would be, in my opinion, 85. I keep mine at 75% humidity, and we might be repeating ourselves in the video a little bit, but for me, I keep my relative humidity at, I try to anyways, under 75%. When I go over 75% humidity, I notice my Alocasia get guttation, they get edema, they get that tipping, and I don't like that, and nobody does. That's why we're here, right? So I keep it at a balance. My Alocasia doors, for the most part, are actually kind of cracked open, because my humidity gets too high in there when it's not, and especially the seasonal change. So from summer to spring, or to fall rather, it took kind of a harder time for my Alocasia to adjust. It took about 3 weeks for them to properly acclimate to the change, because they did notice a change. The temperatures change, humidity changes, and you will notice that they will drink less, so they will get more edema because it's getting colder, right? So, and that's what it says here. It says 60 to 80%. I technically say that it can go low. Oh, they do actually say that here too. They will adapt to that ambient humidity as low as like 30%. They will. You just have to water them correctly if they are going through that change. So if your humidity is, lower, and your room temperature, so it's all about VPD. So it's hard for me to really give you you know, what you should do for your plant, because your environment makes that difference. You know, if you are in, if your home, hang on, it's gonna make noise. If your home is at a high temperature and, you know, a matched humidity, let's say, like here's my VPD chart that my mom talks about, or that she said I have, that she likes. So if my house is, I think, at, let's say 70% or 70 degrees humidity. So my relative humidity is 70%. But not humidity, my temperature. Wow, Taz, calm down, take a breath. 70. And my humidity, I would say, is probably at a 45. So I'm in a yellow zone for my plants. So on my list, I would be in a yellow zone, which is not the zone you want to be in. However, I can't really change that because I would have to drastically increase humidity or lower my temps or warm up my house. So and adjust the humidity with that. So if I wanted to get this into the green zone, I would have to increase my humidity to 60 to 70% humidity. And that's not happening in my home because that will cause mold issues, etc. I can, however, lower the temperature. If I lower my temperature to 61 degrees, which is not happening in the winter, if my house is at 45% humidity, then I'm at a 1 for VPD, which is vapor pressure deficit. I'm at a 1 then. That is a really solid growing environment because it's a balanced growing environment for my plant. Knowing that it can adjust how you water, like I said. So if you have a warmer home, your plant is actually going to transpire faster because it's going to want to cool itself down a little bit more. The more warm it is, the more it transpires, the more it drinks water. The lower the temperatures, aka winter, your plant is going to conserve energy. It's not going to drink as much. Your home, if your home is under 70 degrees, you want to be limiting water. You want to carefully introduce water back to it and slowly get used to the winter change. You don't want to be giving it the same amount of water. You want to back off just a little bit, let it acclimate, because it's not going to drink as much if it cools down in your home. If your humidity is higher, it's also going to transpire less. It will match. Your humidity shouldn't really be that high in your home. So this is home environment, by the way, not cabinets. If your humidity in your cabinet, let's say, is 100% humidity or above 85% humidity, they're not going to be able to release as much water out of their leaves because there's not going to be a lot of space for them to do so. So the area around those leaves are going to be more dense. The space for moisture is going to be small. So they're going to hold more moisture, and that's what's also going to lead to edema, which is why you want that lower humidity so that it can continuously, easily flow out that water. And of course, if anybody is more professional at this than me, please feel free to add in a comment correcting anything I say, because remember, I'm not a specialist or a specialist. I'm not an expert. This is my own research, my own experience, my own time with plants. And other people might have better experiences than me, which is awesome. And I always pin those comments that give really constructive advice, useful advice, because we're a community where we teach each other things. So that's kind of what I try to keep in mind when I'm working with my plants. So like all my plants in here now, they get less water during the winter. And I don't change the way I fertilize, because the fertilizers I use are balanced and you can use them all year round, and you don't have to adjust how much because they are formulated to help your plants still uptake those nutrients that are in fertilizers. So let me just take a peek. So, so if your cabinet is higher temperatures, you do want to, or it's higher humidity, and you have a plant, you can actually look up Alocasia's specific named alocasias, like let's say a scalprum, and see the humidity that they like. So it might be 60% might be their ideal humidity. Well, you don't want your scalprum in your cabinet if that's their ideal humidity. Dragon scales, they don't like high humidity. They can be out. Bambino as well. They can be out of the cabinet and be very happy being out of the cabinet. It doesn't need to be in a high humidity or overly high light environment. High light does help with variegation. It does. It does help promote, you know, color, the chlorophyll and everything that's produced, and it helps the plant stay strong, especially variegated plants who are by nature more vulnerable because they don't have as much green on them, right? They don't photosynthesize as strongly as your green plants. Correct. So you can increase airflow in there to cool the area down a little bit if it's too hot in your cabinets. That's what we use it for, to cool the area down, also to promote healthy airflow, because you don't want stagnant air. Stagnant air will lead to mold, fungus, algae, all of that nasty stuff. My fans are so moldy and I hate it. So you want to make sure you're watching that. And even if you have, you know, a decent humidity and you have a really hot cabinet, your plant's going to transpire fast. But if your humidity is too high and your transpiration is trying to go faster because it's warmer, it's not going to if your humidity is high. Remember, we don't want to have high humidity if it's high temps, because it's not going to transpire. It's going to get locked, and that's going to get edema. And that's speaking about our created environments that we have in our cabinets and homes. In nature, it's a little bit different because they can disperse water differently in the ground. You know, they can transpire a little bit easier because there's more environmental space. There's a lot of other factors that we don't have in our home that nature provides for the plants. So we can't really relate one to the other. It's completely different, which I hear that all the time. Well, in nature, well, yes, well, in nature, they're in nature. They're not in your house. So it's a little different.
I have definitely found that some plants in the cabinet do not like it. It's too much humidity, and they get edema very easily. This is a baby Bambino, and I don't know if you can see that edema on it. Can you see?
Yeah, I'll hold it focus for you.
Okay, so, oh yeah,
there you go.
There, can you see it? So I find that baby Bambinos do seem to get edema pretty easily. So I'm normally very careful with my watering of them. However, this one got flushed out yesterday, so it's being very dramatic, and it's not happy with life, and it's just got a lot of edema. But they come right. So what I've done, as you can see, I've taken away all the water from her so she can recover. I won't put any water. There's a fan that was gently blowing in her general direction.
So going back to your cabinet and certain alocasias that are more susceptible to these, sorry, I'm shaking my table, these damages or these issues, putting them in your cabinet can actually do them a disservice. So you really do want to investigate your plant and make sure you know what environment your plant likes the most. I have a lot of my variegated Alocasia outside my cabinet now on my growing shelves. They're not really growing shelves. My display shelves. And they do really good. They're fine. They're not suffering. They didn't even drop any leaves. My Aurea Bambinos are doing great out. They love it. They're not having any issues. I don't have any vegetation on them. And I can bring it here. Hang on. I honestly want to say it's doing better than it was in my cabinet. And I'm pretty sure it's probably dry right now. Yeah, it is dry. I haven't given it any water in quite some time, which my mom talks about in the other parts of this video. So I don't really need to. But here's a corm coming out of him. The top, making sure you can see it. Can you see it? You can see it on the phone, right in the center there. So he's happy and he's thriving out of the cabinet, and that's purely because this environment outside of my cabinet does it better for the plant than it would if it was in my cabinet. Does it mean it wouldn't grow as good in the cabinet? No. It just means that you have the option of putting those outside of your cabinet. if you need to. If you're getting a large amount of edema, you might want to bring it out of your cabinet because that environment might just be, again, doing it a disservice. So we already talked about humidity, so I say we talk about it again in the video. I'm all off kilt here, so this changes the VPD, which changes which you should wear. Oh, okay, so again, if you're changing your VPD, you want to be, again, paying attention to how you water even in your cabinet. Just knowing where your plant is sitting at will tell you how to water it. You want to give it less water in cabinets a lot of the time because it's so humid in there and so warm. Again, though, it's contradictive because then if it's so warm, it's going to want to drink less. It's going to want to drink more to cool itself down. But if you have fans running and that's cooling the area a little bit, that kind of counteracts that or like supports that and doesn't make it so that the plant wants to transpire as much because the humidity in there is dense that it's not going to do great trying to. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I hope it's making sense. Feel free to ask questions if I'm not explaining it well enough for you to understand, because sometimes I feel like I understand it, and when I explain it, it's like it's nonsense to everybody else, but I understand it. Does that make sense? So, and don't forget, if you take them out, they'll acclimate. If you do take your plant out of your cabinet, though, be stingy with the watering directly after. Don't give it a ton of water right away. I would even just take the water away for a couple days and let it just not completely dry out. You don't want to, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but you don't want it to completely dry out. So I will say in a second here, because another part talks about that. So ask yourself, what is my temperature? What is my relative humidity? Match it on the chart. See where you're sitting. This is what the chart looks like. You want to be in the green zone. You don't. This is, these are all different for growing stages. So that's not really our indoor plant stages, but it just gives you a general guide on kind of what to watch for, or how you should increase it, or how you should lower temp or raise your temp in order to kind of match what you're looking for the growth of your alocasias. So Alocasia, though, they are shaded plants for the most part, but for your variegated ones, you're kind of having to force higher light for them in order to get them to variegate. But at the same time, your normal Alocasia, they don't need to be in high light. They can be in a shaded environment, but they do good in full sun for like 1 hour, let's say. They will burn easy though. So take that with a grain of salt. If you're having, light coming through your window and it's hitting your Alocasia leaves directly, that's probably fine for a couple hours. If it's outside in the heat, direct sun, it's going to burn it right away. You're going to notice that bleached out leaf like right away. So you don't really want to do that. No?
Specific things that I found just do not like the cabinets because of the higher humidity.
I'm trying to think.
Dragon scales for sure I found are just, you can see, she'll show you just now, but on top of my cabinet, they're literally hanging out on top of my cabinet. They have no extra humidity. They're doing great. As you can see, I have no edema. I do actually get edema when I water them. What I have found with dragon scales is, and it's quite a problem, they seem to be very thirsty, from my opinion, but at the same time, if you give them so much water, they get really angry.
They do.
So what I've done with them is I tend to ignore them a lot. I don't look at them a lot. I don't make eye contact. And I pretty much, you can see my basin is full. Well, not full, but it's got about a cup. So what I do again is I don't look at them. I don't care how dramatic they are. Once a week, I put one measured cup into their basin reservoir of filtered water, and I'll leave them alone. I've been very lucky. Sometimes I see guttation and I leave it. I don't react to it. I don't have a fan up there. I don't do anything with it. Once I get to a certain stage, they seem to handle it okay. Mm-hmm. When you see a lot of guttation or a lot of edema, just all I do, because sometimes I will see one plant doing it and I'm like, what's it doing? Then all I do is I take my basin of any given plant in my entire room and I empty that basin out immediately. And I leave it. And then he has to wait till the next watering day. Because I've got too much to know what did I empty my basin of. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of things like today, like a scabirusa, I can't say its name. But anyway, when I do see it or the plant is getting like that coloring, that guttation, I'll show you. I think I can show you on that one. I immediately just take my reservoir, empty it out, and I leave it alone. And next watering day, it gets 1 cup again. If it does the same thing, it loses it again. So I'm hoping it's like you can't see it on the, so she sorted herself out. So yeah. So
and they just seem to really like the more less humid, less heat, cooler temperatures. They seem to prefer, and honestly, I
thought I was doing them all a favor, putting them in the cabinet.
But it is actually doing them a disservice. I mean, you see her room. We have to do the actual VPD for it, but her room for the most part stays about between 68 to 72 temperature wise, and I would say your humidity is at maybe 45% to 50%.
No, I think it's higher than that.
Maybe about 65. Your room is a little more.
In summer, it's because of the windows creating heat, and I've got all sorts of like watering in the pots. So I think I normally run at about 62 to 65 humidity outside the cabinet. Now in winter, I don't know. Tasman might be right. I think it's going to drop in the winter because the heating's going to come on.
And they'll get used to that because it'll be a gradual.
I'm not going to risk that completely at 45. I'm going to put a humidifier on and just one.
In your room?
Yeah, look up there. I popped him up there. And if it gets too low, I'm just going to see if plants start struggling, then I'm going to try that. I haven't done it yet. So
Taz is coming, sorry.
Taz is probably right. They probably would just get used to it and get on with it.
Yeah.
But I think we baby our plants a lot. And
I mean, do what makes you more comfortable. That's how we always say is really make sure you're watching your own plant and make sure that you know your plants. And if you're following those simple, rules by what's your humidity, what's your temperature, and what other variables have you added? Fan, misters. Don't do that.
Don't do misters.
That's the worst for you.
It creates so much.
It really does. I see so many people spritzing their plants. I'm like, don't do it.
I don't know why.
Also, I think we talk about when we're talking about misting plants or cooling plants down. Don't mist your plants, please. It actually does a lot of damage, or can do a lot of damage. I see a lot of creatives misting their plants, and it just baffles me because the science behind it is not there. You don't need to. The amount of humidity you receive from misting your plants is going to be like for a minute or two, and that's it. Then the humidity is going to go back to your natural environment. You're literally doing nothing. You're providing it humidity for a couple minutes, and then it's done. What is the point? There's no point. You're actually causing the plant to be a little more confused because it's like, oh, we're getting a little high humidity, and then bam, you're back to your normal humidity. Just leave it at one constant. And also, like, having moisture on top of your leaves blocks stomata. It will cause fungus. It will cause mold. It can cause guttation. It can cause a lot of problems. Now, there are some plants that do need moisture on their leaves, but for what we talk about and the plants we discuss on this specific channel, do not mist your plants. Do not mist your plants. Plants are literally designed to run water off of their leaves. The veins in these plants are literally created as gutters to get rid of moisture. They don't want moisture on their leaves, especially Anthurium. Their veins are actually, and that's why Anthurium face like this, so that when water hits them, their veins actually transport that water off of the leaf. They do not like water on their leaves. And someone might argue that, but you know what? I'm right. I'm right. I'm sorry. I'm correct. They don't want water on their leaves. Don't do it. There's no point. I clean mine and I water the leaves and I wash them and I let them air dry. That's fine. That's fine. You don't need these pebble trays either. You don't need to try and force, a little bit of humidity. You might create humidity for a little bit. If you're putting a pebble tray, let's say, down in a room like this, it's going to dissipate into the room so quickly that it's actually not going to benefit your plant at all. You're just wasting your own time. You're creating an environment for gnats. You're creating an environment for other types of pests. And it's just, in my opinion, it's not worth it. If you really want to have humidity, get a humidifier and put it near that. That will create a little bubble around it. It's still not great because your room is so big that it disperses really fast, but it can cause, a little bit of an aerial humidity increase, which, sure, if that's what you want to do, go for it. Next part. I read that in a very scientific book.
But she is good about researching stuff. I'm horrible. She tells me what to do. I just do it. I don't ask her why. I'm not even interested. Oh, okay, yeah. That's different.
It's because the sun. Sorry.
But I pretty much... Yeah, I just do what you told me to do, and most of the time it's okay. But I have been just watching each plant, and when somebody's dramatic about something, I try and figure out what it is. So if I see something in the cabinets constantly getting guttation or edema or whatever, I've just been taking them out. And I don't care how expensive they are. I have my Scabriuscula or whatever, I don't know, but can't say it. But she's like $3,500 or something stupid I paid for her. She's not in a cabinet.
And she's happy.
She kept getting very dramatic in my cabinet and just she would lose these leaves, these pink like hue leaves. She would lose them super fast, and now she holds them beautifully. So
plant for a while.
Yeah, if you're having a problem with edema on your pink bambinos, dump your water, give it a few days. Pop a little bit of water back in there. If it gets edema, dump it again. But yeah, I have found with the dragon scales, they do not like to go dry. They do not like to run dry. As much as you get edema, I cannot empty my basins and leave it empty for days and days on end. I basically will dump it, and then 2 days later, I've got to put water back in.
I think you get it. That you can figure out how to water that plant you're struggling to keep alive by looking at your environment first, right? Also, your heating and AC, all of that also plays in part because it dries out the air. You need more humidity, or you need to lower water, or what be you. The drying. So when I say dry your plants out or let them dry, don't let them dry 100%. We don't ever want our plants to dry 100%. That's asking for issues with growth. You can cause deformities. You can cause a disruption in the nitrogen cycle of the plant, which is what helps your plant absorb the minerals and nutrients that it needs in order to grow and to create healthy leaf structures, etc. If you're taking that away, if you're drying it out, it actually halts the nitrogen cycle, and your plant has to kind of restart, and it is detrimental for it. I am bad about the accidental drying my plants out. I don't mean to, but it will stop your nitrogen uptake cycle, which is not advised ever. And if you are having you think your plant is struggling to, or it's on a nutrient lockout, you can always give it fulvic acid and humic, or humic is what, humic acid, but humic is what I use. Humic. I have some here actually. My humic acid. It's called Humax. So this acid specifically promotes the uptake of nutrients within the soil, or if you're in pond, you don't really have that same environment. You're giving it the nutrients by fertilizing with that, and it will help it uptake those nutrients and benefit the plant. But if you're on a nutrient lockout, it's not going to do that unless you have some sort of way to push it to do that. And that goes into, you know, if you do have that, it can cause, if you do have nutrient lockout or you stop your nitrogen cycle, it can cause variegation to disappear. It can cause deformities in the leaves. It can cause slow growth. It really causes a lot of issues that you don't really want to deal with, or you don't really need to deal with. And then I want to go into, I wonder if I piece it together the same one. Probably. Moving on. I've talked so much. I should stop talking so much. Sorry, I talk so much. But let me show you. So this is my fertilizing technique. And I do use the bottles when I do a big gallon, but a lot of the time, like I said, I'm using this. So then I just do it in there. And I'm going to talk about all of this in a different video when I finally get the energy for it, because I had to delete my one. And you can measure out your fertilizers with pipettes, and then you just wash them and set them aside to dry, and then you reuse them. And that can, even for a gallon, because you only need like 2.5 to 5 milliliters of CalMag, Silica, blah, blah, this, that. And so these come in handy, so you're not just pouring and pouring. You can just and instantly measure what you need. Another way I do it with those two specific plants is I will actually take my plant, let it get close to drying, not all the way, and I will do the sizzle test. So I will take my squirt and I will look, obviously you're looking to see if it's dry too, but I will take my squirt bottle and I will hear if it's sizzling, and if it's sizzling for a long time as the water's going through, it's dry. And then I will actually pour water
what
I also will do is I will top water in my cabinet a lot of the time, and I will do a sizzle test. So I will take this and I will spray it over the top. Here, I don't know if the mic might pick it up, actually. I don't know if the mic picked that up, but I call it my sizzle test. And if you're trying to figure out if your Alocasia needs water, doing a sizzle test on top is kind of how I'll do it. I'll squirt the top, and I do it pretty much every other day anyways, because with pon even and fans in your cabinet, it dries that top portion of the soil out, and then those top roots can actually get damaged if they're not moist. So I will every now and then go and spray just the tops of every single planter in my cabinet, just to, in a little bit, like I'm not watering it, I'm just giving it a little bit of water, and you'll hear the sizzle. If you hear the sizzle, you want to do a little bit more. If you're not hearing a sizzle, you just want to stop. Don't do it anymore. This is with pon, not with substrates. Well, pon is a substrate. You know what I mean? Not with like soil mediums. That's like a whole different conversation. Corms, and you can do it for soil. If your top soil is drying out and your bottom soil isn't, you can do a little bit just to moisten that top back up. I don't see the problem in that. It shouldn't cause any issues. You don't want it to dry out at the top, right? So
one thing I have 100% found that I needed to mention is when you've got a corm and you get that corm up, I use heating pads, and I always spritz my corms from the top every morning, just a 1-2 spritz, and that's it. What I have noticed is when it's one leaf up, do not
spray it anymore.
Do not spray it anymore. And do get it off your heating pad.
Yeah, and also if you're not using heating pads, we've had some customers spray the tops and fill the reservoirs.
No.
Don't do that. Don't.
It's too much water.
I don't use heating pads, I just fill my reservoir.
Yeah.
I never spray the top unless I forgot about that plant and I've let it dry out. Then I will spray through and fill the bottom. But if you do both together, you're gonna rot it.
A heating pad and a fan, and I don't leave
so they dry
water,
out faster.
Yeah, and I don't leave water in my reservoir. I did in the beginning, and now I'm preferring, because I'm more like a everyday type person, I prefer to take my spray bottle, reservoir empty, okay, but wicking string is still moist because I flush them out quite often. I flush them out quite often. I spritz them like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on each plant. It's whatever works for you. But what I have noticed, if you do or you don't use a heating pad, don't spray the top of your plants once it's got a leaf up, because the edema, I've killed like recently, like
really
3 different Nairobi nights that were all beautiful pink leaf.
I just did
because
to
I was
fry
spritzing the top, I've just killed them, and they don't come back. I rotted them. So
if you're watering your corms and you have a heating pack, that is the time where you can potentially water the top and fill reservoirs, or just top water daily. If you're not using a heating pad, and my mom does talk about this a little bit, so I might not even use this if she's already discussed it, if the blurry doesn't annoy me too much. But if you're not using a heating pad, you just want to be filling up the reservoirs. You don't want to top water or spray the top at all. I know my mom does this, but she's using heating pads. Very different. It dries out faster. And there's fans in there blowing on them. It dries out faster. So then top watering is a little bit more necessary for those corms and those little planters than it would be if she wasn't doing that. If she wasn't on heat packs. Don't do both, one or the other.
So, yeah.
And I mean, that sparked us because we had in our video said we spritz the top, but we didn't really specify that you don't want to be doing both. You want to do one if you're the type of person that routinely checks the basins and you don't have a heating pack. You don't. I have fans, but I turn my fans backwards actually.
Yeah, that's what I've done.
Yeah, I don't want. I want the air. You're not trying to cool your plant off.
No,
you don't want air on it. You're actually
getting
just
airflow. Yeah.
So it doesn't get stagnant. It doesn't rot your plants. You don't get mold. That's really the only reason.
And I do have water in my reservoir. And I mean, I can show you now 50 corms right now that have water in the reservoir because I'm too lazy. But there's water in the reservoir and I spritz them every morning, just 2 puffs. So yes, then I go and I will dump the water out
if you have heating pads.
But this is when I have heating pads and my water's hot. Hey? My water's actually hot in there. So it really depends. You've got to watch that corm. If you start getting a bunch of mold and stuff like that, you put in too much water. Too much water. So,
and mold. Speaking of mold, I get mold on my corms all the time. It's very normal. Why? Because your corms are surrounded by a husk. A husk is an organic material. And a lot of the time the corm will push it off and it won't be needed, so it will rot. It will, and especially a broken off corm, the bottom will rot because it's not provided life anymore. It doesn't have that system. So it will rot and it will cause mold, fungus. So I have a little spray bottle like this. It's all gross on the inside now. But I have a little spray bottle like this. If you watched my Temu video, that's where I got this. I'll hide my face. Okay. So it's just a little bottle, and I will put one part fungicide, and then the other part will be water and hydrochloric acid. Don't use hydrochloric acid in your watering. I will use hydrogen peroxide. Is it? It is hydrogen peroxide. Why am I blinking now? I didn't just tell you to use hydrochloric acid. Don't use HCl, hydrochloric acid. That would be really bad. I don't even know what would happen to a corm if you put hydrochloric. I'd probably disintegrate it a little bit. I don't know. But anyways, and then I will spray all of the tops of my corms in my big case of corms. And this seems, for the most part, to keep mold at bay because, I mean, it's an antifungal. Fungicide is, and it's good. It keeps insects out of your substrate. Miticide, mites out of the substrate. I'm curious to see. Yeah, see, so powdery mildew. That's that shit we get on ours. That's the stuff I don't like, and this does help with that. So I just randomly got annoyed one day. I made this and then sprayed it, and I was like, whatever, we'll see what happens, and it worked. It worked great. I haven't another supplement that you could use for benefiting the strength of your alocasias is silicon. So fertilization. I will do a video on this. I've been struggling lately to get the time to actually make content for this, especially this topic, because it is a topic that I get asked the most. But I was reading there. I have this thing here, but they have fertilization. Literally what I say. Okay, so with fertilization, I always fertilize with silica. And what you want to do now, I've given poor advice in the past about how to use silica because I was never told, and the bottle itself doesn't tell you how to use it correctly. So I'm going to explain how you should use it correctly in this. A friend actually told me about a month or two ago, 3 months ago maybe, about the correct way to use silica. So silica is obviously a molecule. I don't know if it's an element. Silicon is a molecule. I believe it's like Si. I think it's just Si, silicon. I want to say. I don't know if I have it in my book. But I don't think I have it in here. But I might be not making sense. I will write it at the bottom of the screen if I figure it out, but I don't think I actually printed it because I already knew the information, so I don't think I did that. But when it goes into water, it actually needs to form a bond with the oxygen atom of H2O. So, you know, obviously the oxygen atom is at the end of the molecule equation. You want it to form a covalent bond with that oxygen atom. That takes time. It's not instant. That all the little molecules have to move around and attach and wobble, 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 and then they connect. It takes time to do that. So if it's still wobbly, wobbly, wobbling, and it's not connecting, and it hasn't connected yet, and you add in nitrogen, you add in calcium, you add in magnesium, you're adding in your micro, macronutrients, it's going to disrupt that bond, and it's actually not going to bond anymore because now you have nitrogen in there. Now you have magnesium. You have all these other elements that are in the water, and it's disrupting it, and it's not connecting. You're going to notice a coagulation. So if you notice those chunks in your water, it didn't bond correctly, you need to wait like 20 minutes before adding in all of your other fertilization method materials, additives, micro, macro, whatever. And that will go into, once that bond has taken place and you're ready to add in your fertilizer, you add in your fertilizer of choice, which in my case is Foliage Focus. I am going to be using Diamond Nectar and trying that. I'm also using Grow-Tex Precision Precise. They have a bunch of, there's like a 3-pack thing. I am swapping and trying that for a little bit to see what I think. I do love my Foliage Focus, don't get me wrong, but I will fill this with water, let the silica bond, and then I will add in my Foliage Focus. You always want to add in the product first that has the phosphorus. So, which would be my fertilizer, my main, fertilizer. And then you want to add in CalMag after that. CalMag is only needed for the most part if you're not using tap water, because when you're letting your water dissipate those elements out of it, you're removing calcium and magnesium from it. You want to put that back in because your plant needs it. And if you're using filtered water, you also want to CalMag up more than what your fertilizer might have because of that loss. It's not essential, but it definitely doesn't hurt, and it definitely is vital for the plant to have. So I always do it. My plants are very happy, and I recommend doing it as well. And then once you do that, then you can add in all your additives. So your micronutrients, if you will. I put in Super Thrive, and that's pretty much all I use actually is Super Thrive. I will use humic acid if I'm watering through my pond instead of actually I don't like putting humic acid in the reservoirs. I'll only put my nutrient solution in the reservoirs. I won't put humic acid. I'll only do it if I'm like my Bambinos, I water the top. I top water. When they dry, I top water again. And if I'm lazy, I'll fill it a little bit. But for the most part, I'm top watering. And then I'll use that so that it's uptaking those nutrients like I want it to. So it's growing, it's keeping variegation good. But silica, which I did not go back to silica. Silica, I see a lot of content creators on YouTube saying that you should use it. You should, but they don't really say why. They say, oh, it helps with pests, it's a pest preventative, all this, and it is, but it's not for the reason you think. And a lot of people have the idea that it gives variegation or holds variegation. It doesn't actually hold variegation. What it does is it actually strengthens the cellular structure of your plant. The stems, the veining, the cell wall in here, it makes this firmer, harder. That then is the catalyst for your variegation being held together, like not browning and dying, because the cellular wall in that white or yellow or pink is stronger. It's not going to crumble and degrade because of that, you know, chlorophyll issue, it's going to be stronger. That's what holds the variegation. As far as pests, same deal. It doesn't stop pests. It prevents pests from biting into the cells because it's stronger. They can't bite into it because it's harder now. It's hard and they can't break in. So then they just will go find somewhere else to bite. That's what silica kind of does, from what I understand. Just in case you were curious about why we use silica, that's why. It just makes your plant stronger. It makes the stems nice and firm. I mean, look at this. There's no bend. It's so happy. My leaves are very strong. The variegation holds quite nicely. I never looked into silica as a how-to through the scientific way of it. Everyone was just like, add it in, da 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 da. And I did.
I had no idea.
And then my friend was like, you need to wait 20 minutes. And I was like, oh, shit.
Language. We said no.
I don't know that we said that.
We did say that. Oh,
but anyways, that is, you're fine. You can't even see, you dummy.
I gotta see it now when she goes on.
But anyways, that's our talk on Alocasia, specifically Bambino, dragon scale. We'll do a more Alocasia care video at some point, I'm sure. But specifically those two we get the most questions about. Yeah. And you guys have been waiting for that the longest. So I wanted to make sure that we got that out so that you guys
if you have any questions, just send us a message on Instagram. We're happy to answer your questions. So I have a lot of people talking to me about Bambinos. And a lot of the problems are just while they are juveniles. It seems as they get bigger, they seem to lose that edema issue. Mm-hmm. I have not, my bigger ones, not a problem. The smaller ones, even when they get to this size, here, this one's coming on our sale.
Even this one's for sale.
No, it is coming up. But this one, even here. Well, by
the time the video is out.
I know. But it's so cute. But even this one here.
Maybe because they have more surface area now?
Yeah, I don't know. But maybe their roots just, I don't know. Maybe they just get
there's
better at handling the amount of
veins,
water.
More spaces for that water to go sit. So.
All I know is that they handle it a lot better. And, they get the same amount of water every single week. I give them, these guys, like a quarter of a cup into the reservoir, and that's it. Mm-hmm. I fill a reservoir, quarter cup, and that's it. They have to manage till the next week. So, unless somebody's drooping. Yeah. Some of them get super dramatic. Sarians, oh my Lord. Those Sarians are, look, this one's getting thirsty. Look how dramatic it gets. Look at that. It gets super, super dramatic. Can you see that? I mean, it's so dramatic.
That's so cute.
It's like, I just gave it water yet. No, I didn't. Okay, that's why it's getting, so, hello. So some of your plants will tell you when they're thirsty or when they need a bit more. And others just won't. You said to do this. I've never done this, but I'm doing it.
I don't do that. I use my squirt bottle that actually has, not like sprayer.
We'll do a test.
Squirt with the nozzle, like the.
But I'm doing the test.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I know which one, the pink one. Oh, I have one here. Do you want to show it?
I was asking.
Do you want it? Okay. I'm busy dealing with my Sarian's issue.
Fetch it, peasant.
Oh my gosh. Where did I put it now? Oh, it's, here it is.
Oh, I'm positively transpiring as we stand here.
Oh my goodness.
We're waiting for you.
She's like a Sarian, dramatic.
So one of these. This is actually what I'll fill this with silica and water, and I'll let this sit, and then I'll put my other stuff, drip, 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 and then I will fill up my corms with this. But yeah, so this is what I use. I use a bigger one. It's 1,000 milliliter. This one's 250. You can do 500, 1,000, 1,500, but then they get.
Just another spray bottle. I don't know why.
I like it because it takes forever for spray, and I like to.
This, but I have the automatic one.
And when I fill up the corm cup, it fill. Fill.
Yeah, that's good. And you're getting the same amount each time, I think.
Exactly. I get a lot of questions on what to pot alocasias in. We use pon. We use a mix of basement pon, basement's pon, and lechuza pon. Yeah, you can see it. Let me get the plants. I do have a code for Basements Pond. You can find it in the description. You get some percentage off. That's useful. And we mix it together and we put all of our Alocasia into that. Our smaller Alocasia, we have been noticing that pond is drying the top out a bit too much, and the plants are suffering when their babies in that. So we actually mix Lechuza pond with stratum. And I don't have an example here, but maybe I'll insert a picture of it. Here's our corms. Here is the substrate I was talking about, the mix. This is how we plant our corms, in the stratum and fluval, or stratum and pond. These are all babies that sold on our Instagram live. We have a whole bunch of them, and we have more, but these are just the corms because it's too cold out to get the babies from my mom. So, are they pretty? They are. Okay, bye. And we put our plants in that, our baby plants. Even my juvenile plants, I put my Alocasias in them when I repot because they do a lot better. And as long as you're watching that water, the stratum helps the pond stay moist as well and not dry out as fast, which is helpful. And it keeps it at a really balanced moisture level versus it being too hot or too wet or too dry. So I like that. If you're not familiar with pond, it is very easy. You just need to make sure your roots are clear of all organic material, or yes, inorganic. Now I'm blinking. Anyways, anything that could potentially rot, like soil medium left on there, cocoa husk, cocoa core, tree fern fibers left on there, they can potentially rot the roots because it's an unbalanced situation. Now it's in a different environment, so it can melt it and make that mold and rot, and that could lead to an infection on your roots, which will cause rot. Does that make sense? So if you do not feel comfortable with pond, you can use chunky mediums. I don't like swale. Swale is disgusting. I'm sorry, and that means potting mixes, not the substrates I use or others use as well. Potting mixes contain a lot of contaminants for the most part, and people will argue this too. I know. I'm sorry. But there's gnat eggs. There's pests in it. They come from an not a very well managed space. They're just a lot of contaminants, and it causes mold. It causes mites. It causes this. It causes that, and that's not for me. So my mom and I, we don't ever use potting soil, ever. We use our chunky mixes, which is cocoa chips, bark, tree fern fiber. She doesn't anymore, but I do. Not perlite. Pumice. The heavier medium is better than perlite. I don't use perlite unless it's for my Anthurium seedling mix because it's lighter. Pumice is the way to go over perlite. Get pumice. For Alocasia, I do actually add in vermiculite because Alocasia like to have a good balanced moisture level, whereas philodendron are forgiving and Anthurium are more forgiving, so I don't add vermiculite into their mix for the most part. You might get in yours, if you order from me, a little bit left in the container because I mix it as I do it, and it won't hurt your plant at all. It just helps moisture levels stay a little bit more moist. What else is in there? I think that's it. I will add worm casting sometimes, not often. Oh, charcoal. I do always add charcoal in there. It's not only provides a moisture absorption benefit, but it does actually have natural ingredients in charcoal if you're getting the correct kinds that can benefit your plant. It's not really what it's used for, but it can. And look that up. Or I am going to release a video on fertilization and that sort of thing, informative talk stuff later. Can't talk. But as for now, if you're new to Alocasia and you're ready to pot yours up, what to use, I really suggest you use Palm. I really do. It works great for us. We love it. And it's a short learning curve. It doesn't take long to figure it out. It's pretty easy to kind of grasp and get a handle of. and it just, you know, you might lose one or two. Just, you know, when you first pot it into there, be stingy with your water. Don't overwater. You want to do it delicately because it's going to be shocked, and when your plant is shocked, especially after an import or a shipment, it's not going to drink as much water. And then if you're giving it that water while it's in shock, it's going to rot, right? It's going to instantly rot because it's just sitting in water that it's not drinking. So that's why we say when you get plants in the mail, don't repot them. I have my Spiritus Sancti there. I got it 2 weeks ago. I still haven't repotted. I can because I am very good at repotting after things arrive because I have a lot of experience doing it. If you're new to the plant world and you don't understand how plants work as well as I might, for example, wait. Be patient. Wait a couple days. Let your plant adjust and then repot it. You know, we do it all the time because we know how to. We're familiar with water schedules for our plants or how our plant drinks, our environmental calculations, if you will, and we can manage that more effectively. So if you get a plant from someone, just if it needs a little water, give it a little water and just set it down in your cabinet and just let it give it some time. It doesn't need to be repot right away. It is tempting, but you could kill it. And if you spend $300 to $5,000, well, sometimes dollars on a plant, you're raising the risk of killing it, and you don't want to do that to you. So yeah, I would tread lightly in that regard. But I'm going to end this. I appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully this was helpful. Let me know if this gave you any insight that you didn't have before, or maybe it opened your eyes to a few things that you weren't familiar with, or maybe you got a eureka moment and it clicked in your head. You're like, oh my God, no wonder my plant is sucking because I am giving it too much water and it is cold. You know, maybe you get a moment like that. I did when I first researched it. I was like, oh, that makes sense. But again, I say goodbye with my mom in the end of ours. But again, just thank you for watching. We appreciate you so much. You guys make this effort we put into this well worth it. And we are starting to look forward to making content a lot more. And it gives us more excitement. And we have you guys to thank for that. So thank you. I will finally let you go. And I hope you guys have a great week. And I will see you next time. Bye.